Opinions, folks, are things that evolve. And as we get older, those opinions often shift and evolve. Things are no different with Dragon Ball. Like any other sort of media. You don't look at the same thing in the franchise when you were at a teenager stage, or even as a young adult, or a proper adult. Sometimes it takes time to warm up to certain elements within the series, or certain characters. Or you then realize that your affinity for some of the stuff was just pure nostalgia. But nowadays, we are no longer interested in talking about things that we don't like. Instead, we would rather talk about characters and motifs that have grown on us with time. And examples of that can be found in most of the eras of the franchise. Some of these won't be surprises, but there are some hot takes in here, so hopefully you won't hate us for them. But we've got to start with a very classic Dragon Ball character that has been mistreated by the anime in the long run, Chi-Chi. Now, we have touched on the topic of Chi-Chi several times, but when you're a kid or you're a teenager, she is incredibly annoying. I mean, why wouldn't she be? Her kid and husband can do all of these incredible things, saving the Earth, and yet, despite all of that, she is portrayed as an overprotective stick in the mud, and comes across sometimes as borderline abusive. One reason for that is Toriyama's own admission that he doesn't really know how to write women who are, in his own words, gentle. And that's kind of a crappy reason to do so, Toriyama. Especially that the anime is amping up her Tiger Mother motif up to 11. And honestly, the older you are, the more you begin to see how unfair this truly is. She really wants what's best for her family, but her biggest problem is that her priorities are really not in line with the magical, mystical adventure world of Dragon Ball that she finds herself living in. It's very much a tonal problem that just sets herself out against the other characters, that she feels a little bit disconnected from the things that are going on around her. She's in another world at the moment in Dragon Ball Z and beyond, but if you think about it, she had to deal with a lot of really messed up stuff in her life. A lot more than what the average person would say, even in the Dragon World's average person. Getting through her own husband's death twice. Yet she still remained quite resilient and wanted what's best for her sons. Luckily, she does seem to be a little bit more relaxed at the end of Z, having chilled out a little bit. And we all really hope that we will eventually get there, past the end of Z. Now, the next thing on this list is the Dragon Ball supervillains and antagonists. Okay, hear us out on this one. Out of all the enemies that appeared in the Dragon Ball Super era of the show, only the likes of Beerus, Hit, New Broly, and Moro were met with initial enthusiasm. Maybe Goku Black to a lesser extent, but that whole motif, that whole shebang, whew, that was a much more complicated animal. Also, most of those guys weren't really even villains. With the first three we told you about, they eventually become allies of the Dragon Team, and Moro is, for now, a manga-exclusive character. And in our opinion, he lost a lot of his charm when he switched his ram snout for a just perfect cell-like face, only to regain some novelty when he fused with the planet Earth itself. That's when he became a tragic villain. Beerus works greatly as a point of reference for other characters. Broly is generally a better take on the old Broly. I'm not dissing old Broly, folks, we just prefer the newer version. And Hit, well, he just makes the donuts really, really well. And he was kind of cool and had cool uses in filler arcs. Now, we mentioned Goku Black, and we do see that he is nowadays quite loved amongst the fandom, but we do remember the days that people initially were disappointed when he was revealed to just be a mind-possessed Zamasu. And honestly, we were memeing the living crap out of the Green Kai back in the day, and loved to point out how overcomplicated and unnecessary he seemed for a Sunday morning cartoon. The talk of justice? This felt like something that Studio Mappa would make, not a Dragon Ball show. How his motivations really couldn't quite reach the depths that they were supposed to, because of the medium that he found himself presented in. And no, the manga version was much more gruesome, and you could go a little bit further out of the ordinary, didn't fully remedy the situation either. And the whole crying thing, really? But you know what? Zamasu, okay, it's kind of cool. Moreover, he could work without Black. The fact that we did get a canonical evil Goku was of course welcomed by many, because the fandom's been wanting an evil Goku. But still, we do consider him the best villain that we were given in the era of Dragon Ball Super. A lot of the issues that we have with him still stand, but they no longer sting as much as they did when we first saw them in the initial run, we guess. Now, okay, we haven't mentioned two quite large elephants in the room, the Heaters and Jiren. Now, these tend to be the real punching bags amongst the community, and we kind of get why. With the four siblings, we already kind of liked them, but I do understand why people can be mad that Gas was kind of cheating his way to the top of the food chain, as was Granola. But still, I don't know, was he competent? I mean, he was a tragic villain, especially by the end, as he was used by his brother throughout the entire plot, to whom he was fiercely and naively loyal. Like I said, that end was incredibly gruesome and sad, as he was already falling apart, and Frieza just cut to the chase and finished it off a lot sooner. And you know what? You don't really have that many villains in Dragon Ball that we feel sympathetic toward, but don't end up seeing redeemed in some sort of a way. Like, they're on the way to redemption, but then they're snuffed out. I think the closest we ever got was Super's Paragus. Maybe Zangief and Bojack Unbound? Possibly? And Elec is kind of delightfully slippery, and ironically, the weakest of the bunch, while still remaining in control because he had the gift of the gab. Now, we like these types of bad guys. That's why to us, the likes of Jiro, Imperfect Cell, and Barbody, we really like them on this channel. They are incredibly underrated villains with a lot more potential. That's why in Dragon Ball Daima, we are very excited to see more and more about the significance of Barbody, because it's quite clear that he is going to be playing a big part in it. Now, the big one, Jiren. Yes, personality-wise, he is incredibly bland. He is a lamer version of Batman, and the anime really doesn't give him that much agency. But the manga really does improve on his backstory though. It's definitely worth a read if you haven't read the manga adaptation of Jiren. But on the other hand, he is kinda cool, you know? The design, the fighting style, the whole resilience, the fact he's the subverted alien Roswell concept, that's cool. Beefcake alien instead of scrawny little alien that we're so used to. The idea of Jiren is really impressive, and if he's back in the official media, he does stand a much better chance of working with Goku as an ally more than a friend. He did show up in Super Dragon Ball Heroes from time to time, and he was already better in those stories, and that's just a promotional anime for cards. And he is better in Heroes, trust me. But ultimately, we really don't hate Jiren. He's just at this point a little meh. But he can improve, you know? He's certainly getting there. But yeah, all of the supervillains had big shoes to fill. King Piccolo, Vegeta, Frieza, Cell, and even Boo. They're so iconic that everything that comes after them just feels a bit repetitive, inane, derogatory. Now, okay, of course, we are getting to GT's Grand Tour, and we have a whole video on this topic anyway, so we're going to keep it short. But originally, when Dragon Ball GT came out, we initially welcomed its turn toward more action and fighting that was more akin to Z, because at the beginning, it really seemed a bit bleh. Because after all, when you come to this show immediately after the Boo saga, you expect stronger opponents and more bombastic fights. And that's all well and good, but with time we kind of realised that not only did the adventure portion of the story turn out not to be so bad, it did have its charm. We would also like to see more of it. I feel like it could have actually turned out to be very good. And of course, Super Saiyan 4 is iconic, Baby being a good villain, and Omega Shenron doing an okay job, only going on for far too long. But still, I don't know. If the series were longer and more focused on the adventures in space, Dragon Ball GT could have found its footing at some point. Now, having rewatched it, it definitely had potential. And while we don't usually try to sway you toward a certain version of a show, in this case, the GT subs are a much better experience. Next up is Mr. Satan and Hercule. This is going to be more of Hav's personal take that I'm going to be sharing with you, but in Z, the champ was more unfunny annoying than unfunny charming, or even just straight up charming. Honestly, his whole shtick is understandable, and he does come around eventually in the end, but there was always, at the beginning, that annoying feeling of him never getting his proper comeuppance. Of course, he had to live in fear of someone revealing his secret to the world, much like we saw with Android 18 in the Boo saga, but it was a comfortable life nonetheless. But honestly, to us, he did feel more irritating than endearing, and even I can agree to that. That is until GT and Super came along. Because him being part of the overall Son family, the granddad of Pan, the father of Videl, and being rather supportive towards Gohan as his son-in-law, it's really sweet. And he genuinely does have some hilarious moments every now and again. That whole tale of Beerus after the Battle of God saga, that is genuinely funny. And him getting Majin Buu in shape is an incredible feat. Nobody could ever do that except Mr. Satan, even if it didn't work out for too long. And he's no longer as obnoxious as he used to be. It's also cool that he kind of has this odd friendship with Goku now. So yeah, Hercule is cool now, sort of. But hey, the Dragon Ball Super anime filler has improved on a lot of side characters. While they made some questionable decisions with Goku in those moments, some of the human characters in those really had awesome situations. And I can tell you, making Hab no longer hate Mr. Satan is a very big deal. Now, okay, old Broly. Old Broly, that's a bit of an odd one. You start out thinking, oh my god, he's so cool! Then you get older and you realize his entire shtick is motivated by crying infants, and not some of the more drastic things that happen amongst him and his own backstory. Suddenly, you start to be really condescending toward him. Then the new one comes out, who is a much more fleshed out and likable iteration. And then you suddenly forget about the original version. But when you do go back to look at old Broly after seeing new Broly, you realize that, okay, he's still a classic villain. Okay, he only has one decent movie. And okay, he doesn't have much of a personality, but he is a force of nature. A playground legend, and one of the most widely discussed characters outside of Goku and Vegeta amongst the fandom. Is he the best written bad guy in the saga? No, not by a long shot. But you cannot deny him a rightful place in the popularity poll. Or the fact that at one point or another, everybody found him cool. And yeah, okay, he does have plenty of badass moments. So even if you like the new one more, like we do, you kind of have to respect the original. Then there's Frieza's second resurrection. Okay, we're cheating here a little bit because this was remedied when Super was still airing, but we remember our reaction when it was first announced. It was really at that point when myself and Hab were really getting to know each other and learning about the idea of Boo being a fake out for the Tournament of Power, and then we're going to be getting Frieza again. And after Resurrection F, everyone was concerned, even diehard Frieza fans. But ever since Goku visited him in his own personal hell, there turned out to be something different about him. It was still the same Galactic Emperor we knew and loved, but he'd evolved. You know what? That was okay. Ever since he was on the screen or on a page, he steals the show regardless. Some of the best moments of the Tournament of Power are down to him and him just existing. Every time you see him in Broly, he is pure joy. And whilst poor Granola really didn't get the resolution he wanted, the whole Black Frieza sequence was a very good moment for him. So, okay, they actually fixed something. They doubled down on an idea that didn't work and then made it work, surprisingly. A rare occurrence, yes, but a welcome one. Then, of course, there's S-Cells. You know, when Star Wars introduced midichlorians, a lot of fans were rightfully angry, thinking that George Lucas had taken a lot of the mysticism away in regards to the Force. It's not entirely true, as if you go deeper into the topic, you will begin to find out that they merely indicate more powerful individuals, and not right out creating potential. But the Phantom Menace doesn't show it in that way, and the harm was already done, thus rendering this immortal meme. So understandably, when Toriyama created his own version of midichlorians, which may or may not be one of his own classic interview ad-libs, fans were not happy. And when I tried to make a video on the subject, you were very, very vocal. But you know what? Looking at what we have, it kind of makes sense. I mean, S-Cells don't make the characters with lower levels necessarily weaker. I mean, just look at Goku and Vegeta. They only give potential Super Saiyans an easier start in life, when it comes to their progeny especially. And this is kind of consistent with what we've seen with Goten, Trunks, and the Super version of Pan. They just need less effort to catch up to Goku and Vegeta. They've already got it. It doesn't really matter. It just means they have a free pass to beat their dads. It does bring up some more bad memories from Star Wars, but if you think about it, it's been rather consistent throughout the series. Not counting Pan and GT, of course, but that's mostly down to good old sexism from Toriyama of the 90s. And DBZ immediately started by being more technical about his power levels. And that's it. Things we now feel pretty positive toward about Dragon Ball. Do you have any of those? Now remember, we're interested in those that are connected to the things that you didn't like, but that you eventually learned to appreciate in time. Dragon Ball's been around for nearly 40 years, and we do believe that you folks have changed your mind about some stuff, and we would love to hear it in the comments. But anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Catch you later!